Hello again, everybody. Welcome to the two-man game here on Claims Online. I'm Bob Ramsey. That's my partner, Matt Rocchio. And this is the show where we break down basketball for you, in particular, St. Louis U primarily. We try and hit the NBA and anything else that kind of strikes our fancy. I don't know if anybody's struck your fancy lately, Rock, but we're going to try. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Rammer. How you doing?
Doing well. So let's dive right in and start with the Billikens. A 1-1 week as they run this very tough strength of schedule gauntlet. They actually kind of reversed the win-loss as I thought it might go. When I looked at the schedule preseason, the Billikens were able to win on the road at Boise State and then lost at home to Alabama Birmingham. We're going to break both those games down a little bit. But for me, an overarching piece for the week was the Billikens were not playing as good a basketball as I think they're capable. Travis Ford said the same thing, and I wouldn't call it alarming, but mildly concerning.
I guess the first thing I would want to hear from you is what exactly were some of the thoughts, and I know Travis can be, admitting, very reasonably terse after losses, especially when they're tough ones like that. What were the notes you got from him after a tough UAB loss?
Well, so UAB was the second of the two in the week, and the Billikens just weren't playing very well. And that's an easy one to break down. All the Billiken shooting percentages were good. All of them were good. The problem was you let UAB get, I forgot the exact number, 15 more shots. Well, how does that happen? Well, you didn't rebound.
Yeah.
And when you did turn it over, it wasn't an alarming number of turnovers. Usually, if you can keep it at a dozen or less, you're in pretty good shape in most games, except it seemed that UAB turned every turnover into points. But the main reason that UAB got so many more looks at the basket was because of all their offensive rebounds. And that is starting to become a little bit more of a trend. It was sort of one of those, it wasn't one of those trends that slapped you in the face all of a sudden. It sort of crept into games as the season is worn on. We saw a little bit at Boise and then, but finally it's gotten to the point where, my gosh, look at this. We shot the ball well. And we didn't turn it over too much, yet we still gave up too many shots, and that's how UAB won the game. And the other thing is, this can kind of be an insidious element to a team game as well. Is it seemed that to borrow from soccer, every 50-50 ball, it seemed like was won by UAB. It seemed like and I hate this phrase. But it fits appearance-wise. They wanted it more.
Yeah.
Again, I hate that phrase.
Yeah,
I think most of the time it's a bunch of baloney, but the stats sort of fit that narrative.
Yeah, and rebounds were something that was kind of jumping out as, like you said, by the numbers, they weren't getting dominated, but it seemed to slew a lot of the things that we've kind of pointed out this season haven't been, the gross – big picture kind of numbers, but it just seems like the timing of the rebounds or the timings of the turnovers or the timings of, bad shot selection, which also kind of crept up at times in this game. It doesn't happen often, but man, when it happens, it is in backbreaking, crucial moments that in previous games just kind of made you sweat a little bit because they were able to get the W, but obviously kind of came back to bite you and obviously led to your just second loss of the season.
And let me back up when we talk about as things move forward and little things happen. Got a really good win on the road, right? Boise State on the road. Hey, that's tremendous. The Billikens were outplayed in almost every category. Outplayed by the Broncos, except the Billikens got 34 free throw attempts and hit a remarkable 30 of 34. They took more than Boise State, or they made more than Boise State took. And that's a formula that always helps you win. 30 of 34 is a truly remarkable number. And Boise hit 12 of 26, if memory serves. that's the reason you won. That's the reason they lost, depending on your perspective. And, if Boise has to look at those numbers and say, if we were just bad instead of historically abysmal,
Mm-hmm.
just bad, 4 or 5 more free throws, they win the game. They outplayed the Billikens, and that should have sent up some red flags, and I think it did. And UAB came in and took advantage.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the rebounding after the Boise State game, but really before the UAB game about, again, it was just the timing of the boards were bad, and if a couple things break just a different way, that's a loss in Boise. But I like looking at the week in a grander way and saying, listen, you played like an L in Boise, but you got a win, and then you played like a win, leading the first 35 minutes of a game at home against the Blazers, and then you got the L. So I think it's interesting to look at it that way. I think SLU fans would appreciate, and maybe that's some good perspective when you kind of look at it that way instead of just saying, such a good win against Boise State, and then obviously a tough win against UAB. And that's the thing, when we look back on it and just, if you're just looking at schedules, it's not a bad loss at all. In every conceivable rating and ranking, UAB, this year is so far ranked as a better team than SLU. But when you look at leading for 35 minutes, when you look at, a 4-minute span late in the game, late in the second half, where you really screw up. I mean, it was a bad second half for the most part. You only scored 24 points. That's never good. But it really was just that little, about 9-minute, 8:30 to about 4 that really broke them.
Yep.
And then they didn't play too bad in the last 4 minutes. I mean, that last shot by Jimerson, I mean, that's a great look. So, I mean, I like looking at it more in this 2-game view, this week view, instead of just focusing on Boise and UAB. I like that perspective.
And so I don't know. I know you like to look at tape and go through numbers. I don't know if any of those other numbers jumped out at you in the UAB game. For me, again, I go back to hustle points, things like boxing out, things that don't always show up in the numbers.
Yeah, the one thing that's coming out that came out to me right now, and this is some of the numbers I dug out, is the 3-point shooting of SLU right now, because there really are some crazy numbers. First off, in the UAB game, let's just look at that game for a moment, and then I'm going to talk about some season-long stats. In that UAB game, the first 6 of their 16 field goals attempts were 3-point attempts, and they hit 4 of them, I believe. And instead of focusing on maybe that being a small sample size, I choose to focus on the fact that if you break down those first 16 shots, the possessions that led up to them and the possessions that got those shots were perfect possessions in a lot of ways. It was the take away the Harris Stowe game. That first half was the best half-court offense and ball movement overall that I think we've seen from SLU the entire season.
I agree.
And so when you look at that, the first 6 of 16 are 3-pointers, and you're making them, and then you zoom out and you see 10 of 27 of your shots in the first half. That's the breakdown. 27 total shots, just 10 of 3. And then you look at your second half, 9 of 22, you just go 1 of 9. I thought the change in how well the offense was running early in the first half, and then especially as we moved into the second half, it was worrisome that they weren't able to get those same looks. And overall, this transitions to the whole season, because this is honestly crazy to me. Right now, when it comes to 3-point rate, so the amount of shots you're taking and the percentage of them that are 3-point shots total, SLU is 327th in the country out of 358.
On shots taken, 3-point shots taken.
Rate. So their total, the percentage of their 3-point shots, the percentage of their total shots that are 3-pointers. They are 327th in the country right now. But they are hitting those 3-pointers at a 39% rate, which is 25th in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think there's a clear area in there where you could raise up the volume and with an expected drop in efficiency, because that's going to happen, it would be a net bonus for this offense.
I agree.
And that's something right now that's key to me. And one of the big things, and we saw this a lot against UAB, and I talked about this in a previous podcast, is they keep using Gibson as a cutter on these sharp curls around Okoro and Linson towards the basket, and he's not getting a lot of his interior points from those possessions. He's getting a lot of his free throws, but when he's actually finishing at the rim, he's doing that more in transition and off cuts on the baseline. So he's not getting a whole ton of production on those plays. So just a little thing where if Gibson's just getting 2 or 3 more three-point attempts, just coming off those screens high for a three-pointer off the wing, that completely changes the rate of the threes they're taking. That little bit, just 2 or 3 more points per possession or across 100 possessions, that changes a season. That changes games across a season.
Yeah, and you know what? To support your point, and shockingly, I couldn't agree more. I think you're absolutely dead on. And you take a look, Gibson is hitting 39%. He's an elite shooter, but he's only taken 41 threes.
Mm-hmm.
Heck, wouldn't bother me if that were doubled. Now, part of the issue there is the old football line. Well, they own scholarship too.
Yeah, that's true.
Meaning they're taking that shot away from him. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Nesbitt, he's shooting 35%. That's quality. 30 to me, 33% is sort of the minimum acceptable for me. If you're below 33%, you got to be careful taking too many. 35% is solid. TJ Hargrove, he's only taken 17 threes. He's shooting 53%. 53%. Take the shot.
And he struggled. He struggled over the last 3 games. Well, I wrote it down over here. He struggled the last 3 games. 3 points, 6 points, 4 points on 1 of 6 shooting, 2 of 3 shooting, and 1 of 3 shooting. But guess what? That's 4 total makes. 3 of them are his 3 makes from 3 on 6 shots. He's shooting 50% in 3 games where he hasn't been productive. I mean, and again, the reason why I focus on those Jimerson cuts is because it's one part of the offense that is used so often. And if you watch the plays, it's not like they're like clumped up outside. Almost every time they get it on the weak side, and there's no defender out there on the wing. And he has he has the corner pretty much up until almost the high wing. He has that to run out to, depending on the angles they want to play with or where the screen is. And so, and it's just 1 or 2 more opportunities a game. It's just a little bit different. That's one thing that definitely kept being a big part of what I was watching against the Blazers. And then when I went in and saw the numbers, when I saw the 3-point rate, that was insane. The teams around them, by the way, that low, are either not good or ridiculously athletic and rebound like crazy and are able to score inside, like Kentucky and a couple other schools like Santa Barbara, who they don't take a lot of threes, but they're successful teams. But a lot of the teams around them at the bottom are not good.
No, they're terrible.
And so it seems like a weird thing. And so they can take more shots. And I actually think if you want to watch a team about when it comes to 3-point shooting, that I think you could take something if you're a Billikens fan with some expectation. It'll be tonight when we watch them play Belmont. That'll be a similar team, and we'll get into them later. But just kind of put that in your brain that's kind of what I'm thinking.
I agree.
When I talk about the increase in outside shooting.
Yeah, and let me talk about a couple of other guys. And I would not presume to suggest that Travis Ford should change his rotation or his players or any of those things. That's not my place. And I go to a number of practices, but I'm not at every practice. And you've got a coaching staff that, not counting Travis, has 2 of his assistants have been high-level head coaches. This bunch knows what they're doing. Yeah. So I don't want anybody to think I'm being critical. But I mentioned the guys, with those shooting percentages. DeAndre Jones, we saw what he's capable of. He's now hitting 48%. And then here's a guy who's only played 6 of the 9 games. Rashad Williams, who after every game, after every practice, continues to shoot his 3. He's a veteran, 37% from 3-point range. I really believe that the Billikens will make this more of a weapon, because when they were getting when they were working to get – here's the other thing. You don't want to just go down and jack up wild shots.
No.
You need it to be within the offense. And that's what you were saying. You pointed it out. The efficiency of the first half, that's what you're striving for. And I'm sure we're going to see more of an effort on that moving forward.
By the way, on DeAndre Jones, I'm glad you mentioned that. He doesn't qualify right now for minutes played or shots taken, but if he did qualify, he would be tied for third in the nation for offensive rating. Now, offensive rating has there's problems with the stat, but relative, DeAndre Jones, when he's on the court, is producing offensively at an insane rate. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see more and more of him because, he's hitting his threes at a rate. And heck, he's taking threes at a rate that I'd like to see, the whole team, maybe not to that rate, but more so in line with what I want to see. But, DeAndre Jones, I mean, he was obviously incredible against the Blazers off the bench. The entire bench was really good, too.
And how about this?
Really, he's been huge.
He's played 170 minutes this year. 3 turnovers.
Yeah, I know Travis pointed out the low turnover count of him and Nesbitt. Nesbitt was the other player he pointed out. Really low turnover count because I think Travis and we've pointed out, and I think it's really what you should focus on because he is still essentially a freshman. Defense, ball handling, moving the ball, effort plays. That's really the focus right now for Nesbitt. And I think you saw that again in a game where the shot wasn't falling when he was taking it, but he didn't take any bad shots really out of the rhythm of the offense. And, he had a couple more of those rebounds where he ripped it away from somebody in a really athletic fashion that I love. So, I like what we're seeing from Jay Nez, and I like that Ford is focusing on that stuff. That's a great thing to highlight.
Let's use Jay Nez as our transition. Are you done with UAB?
Other than the fact that the bench was incredible and that's it. I loved that. Oh my God, that was whew.
The first few games of the year, Fred, you were like, boy, where's Fred Thatch? Memphis, he was frustrated. But since Memphis, this is the guy off the bench that is just amazing.
31 points from 5 starters, 41 points from 3 bench players.
Yep.
That's an incredible. I just wanted to point that out because that is absolutely wild. But go ahead and transition with Jay Nez.
Yeah, with Jay Nez, let's talk about it because I think Jay Nez is the kind of guy that can. I've used this term with him before because I think we all feel that it's going to be coming, but I think he is an X factor guy against Belmont tonight. Belmont comes in. They've got a couple of very nice wins. They beat Drake and they beat Iona. Mm-hmm. Those are 2 very, very nice wins. Their losses came at Ohio, at LSU, and against Dayton. So no bad losses in there either. So what do? Well, they've shot over 100 more threes than SLU, referencing back to your point. Mm-hmm. They score 79 a game. What they don't do, they don't get a ton of rebounds, only 33 a game. In fact,
although they beat the crap out of Drake on the boards.
Yeah,
they slaughtered Drake on the boards.
Well, here's the key thing. I think Nick Nijinsky is 6'11", 260. I think it is. Mm-hmm. He's their leading scorer. He's their 1 rebound less than Will Richard. So 17 points, 6 rebounds a game. He hits his free throws, 57% from the field. And we've seen we all really like the Billiken tandem of bigs. Traore eventually is going to get more time too. So your trio of bigs, but we've seen with Memphis and with UAB, 7-footers. That's a legitimate problem. It's a legitimate problem.
Yeah, it's going to be another big game for Okoro off the bench. That's going to be huge because he can give Muzinski problems. If you look at their rebounding numbers and things like that, they're actually pretty similar. Okoro, if you look at his advanced stats, his rebounding numbers are actually really good.
Yeah.
And when you look at their total stats, I mean, 19, 12, almost 3 blocks when you combine them across 38 minutes, and Muzinski's right there, he plays almost 30 minutes, and so it's going to be a handful for him, but it is something that they could take advantage of, and more so I think let's not get bogged down in just talking about rebounds and the big men. This could be a game where if Linson and Okoro are just solid and consistent with boxing him out, then Thatch, Nesbitt, these guys can crash the boards and I think have a good night again. Now there's some good wings who board well. You already mentioned Will Richard, who's 6'5" and gets 6.4 boards per game. That's extremely impressive, and we'll talk more about him.
Yeah.
But I think that could be a factor where SLU could maybe take advantage of it. Maybe this is where they kind of turn it around when it comes to the rebounding game.
So here's the problem with that. They shoot 27 threes a game, and everybody shoots them except for the big boy. He's even tried 8. But
he's 3 assists per game, and he's getting those on kickouts, off doubles and stuff like that and he's good at that.
The point I'm getting to is 27 threes a game. So you're a player. How do you wrap your head around? You've got to help on rebounding and keep Belmont off the board. You can't get killed and give up all the offensive boards like you did against UAB. However, you can't cheat to the rim because everybody else is shooting threes and at a high rate. It is really, you can see how that is really going to be a challenge to try and do both things 20 feet away from each other.
Yeah, and the combination of Shepard and Richard is going to be really interesting to watch, 6'6" and 6'5". And the key thing for me is I think in college basketball, we get so used to seeing teams that have, a guy who can drive, a guy who can shoot, a guy who can pass. But these guys, they both take about half of their shots inside the arc and half of their shots outside the arc, which is very impressive. And Richard they're both very efficient players. So they don't, you're not having guys who just jack shots. They take smart shots within their offense. It's Belmont. That assessment, if you've watched basketball or college basketball in the past decade, is not a surprising thing to you. That's what Belmont does. But these guys are just an extension of that. And Richard, get ready to hear about this guy for multiple years. He's a freshman. He's already started. He didn't start the first 3 games. He started the last 7, averaging 12 points on 12 points, 11 points on just 7.5 shots per game. That's efficiency. I mean, this kid's a monster, and this Shepard guy doesn't mess around either.
Well, again, 2 different teams, styles, whatever. I'd like to think the Bills can take a general lesson from this team because with the athletes the Bills have, taking more threes, making more threes, ultimately opens up things to drive.
Yeah.
If for those who aren't hardcore fans, it might seem like an oxymoron, but when you make somebody close out hard, that gives you the opportunity to drive past them. If they're passive, then you can shoot. So they got to pick their poison, but you've got to make more threes to force them to do so, in my view.
Yeah, and SLU's actually done a good job of forcing teams off the 3-point line. This season so far, it's been one of the things that I haven't focused on, but just looking at all the numbers, they're clearly doing a good job of it. And This team, it's going to be something we're going to look at tonight. How are they doing that, and are they successful at doing it? Because it's not just about giving a good look; it's also trying to limit those looks because clearly these guys can shoot. And another big thing I kind of want to talk about because we're talking a lot about the starters, and that's pretty much what you're going to see because despite the fact that they've played a lot of guys, a few minutes here and there, and some of these big wins against Sanford and even the loss against LSU, they really do not dip into the bench very much. Sometimes they'll go 8 deep, but really Pearson will get 12, 15 minutes, and he's just a glue guy. Doesn't really put much up on the stat sheet. Jacoby Wood will play about 15, 20 minutes every, different games. He'll go anywhere from like 10 to 20 minutes. So I'm interested to see if they can, if Muszynski gets into foul trouble, then the rebounding conversation we just had, that completely changes. Because at that point you have 6'8" Hollander, who's a bench guy, and that's their big man. That's their depth as a forward. So I mean, if Muszynski gets into foul trouble, that right there could completely throw it on its head. And just overall, I think we could see the bigger guard/forwards like Nesbitt and Hargrove, they could have some big moments in this game, I think. I think this is their time. They've had the quiet games. I think this could be the game where we see Yuri and Gibson, snap back to what we expect from them, but this could be where we see TJ and Nesbitt really kind of make a little bit of a leap from what we've seen the last week.
So just to kind of wrap up Belmont, I think that everybody knows you got to protect the home court. This would be a big win if you can get this. Actually, this is one of those games that's great for both teams. But being the home team, you really need it. Belmont takes a loss. It's a good loss on the road against another good team. One of the ratings was out today. Net rating was out yesterday, and the Bills are in the top 100, which is where they minimum of where they should be every year. And these are the kind of games that help them achieve in the net ratings. So this is a real big one tonight.
Yeah, speaking of ratings, just a quick little thing to kind of maybe get your head, expectations are hard sometimes in college basketball with all the different conferences and so on and so forth. St. Louis right now is 89th KenPom, 67th in the net, and Belmont is 58th KenPom and 43rd in the net. So about 20, 30 spots separating them in both rankings, so relatively about the same. Two other stats I want to get out there really quick in tonight's game to watch for. Teams get to the line against Belmont, and that obviously has been huge for SLU. It's top 50 in the nation of what teams are doing against Belmont from the free throw line. So if SLU can continue to hit their spots, and again, it wasn't a big game, it wasn't a defining game, but if SLU wins against UAB, we're still talking about 16-22 as a good, respectable, day from the free throw line. And so that could be another big factor in this game. And then also the country's leader in steals, Grayson Murphy, 6'2", fifth-year senior guard, is a Belmont Bulldog. I think that matchup could be big. I think Quan Jackson in the UAB game showed up especially late as a defender, guarding multiple players. And I think Grayson Murphy at 6'2" is just about the perfect player to hound Yuri the entire game. And with 3.2 steals per game, he's probably going to do a pretty good job of it for the most part.
And finally, for me, that's probably why we'll see in the advent of DeAndre Jones as not just a backup, but a big time part of the rotation, and playing those two together could be a critical aspect in this game.
Yeah, I think we're seeing that 8-man rotation has established itself, where Jones is the 1-2, Thatch is the 3-4, Okoro's the 5, and that's where the rotation is. And then obviously the starters can switch around a little bit as well.
Yes.
But I tell you what, with the way the bench is playing right now, this 8-man rotation is really locking in, and I think this is exactly kind of what Travis was talking about preseason when he talked about the 8-man rotation. I have to imagine this is exactly what he would expect. I think the only interesting thing when it comes to rotation at this point, because I think the minutes, I think the starting, I think some people are carping about Linson, but they're not watching the game close enough because he's a monster defensively and offensively. But I think we're going to see this 8-man rotation, the minutes pretty similar. I think the question is at any point, like you said, does the advent of the shooting maybe cause Rashad Williams to get some more minutes, or do we see Traore? Do we see Traore just because there's a bad foul game and he keeps showing that he can play at this level? Yeah.
So those will be the things we'll look for tonight against Belmont. Let's make the transition over to the pro game, the NBA, which is your baby. What happened to Phoenix?
I mean, Booker was out, and so that you kind of expected it. And it was the second night of a back-to-back, and the Warriors weren't about to lose to the same team twice in 3 games. So, I mean, it was every piece of the formula was kind of breaking the Warriors' way. That one didn't really surprise me. What did surprise me is that Ayton, after kind of not dominating, but really showing a weakness in the Warriors in game 1 and his ability to – I mean, it was insane. He would – go down on the offensive end, and he would immediately seal. And he'd get a good look almost every time. And then the crazy part is, because he's 7 feet tall, but he's quick, is he would get down and then he'd seal it with good positioning on the defensive end immediately, with the point where he was locking Looney or Draymond out. And so, I mean, he was just going back and forth for 36 minutes, just seal. I mean, when you see a big man do that, that's enjoyable to watch. And so
Sure is.
that was a huge part of the game, even with Booker going out halfway through. The big thing, more so even than Booker, because again, he wasn't there for half that win, is that Draymond did not let that happen in the second game. And Ayton, while very good, wasn't the dynamic playmaker he was in that first game. And I think that was the big thing. And then Curry hit more shots. Mikal Bridges can play all the defense he wants, and he's very good. And despite a 2-point game, I said he was the most important player in that game. He played a very good defensive game against Curry, but the Warriors just Wiggins pulled out that. Did you see the replay of him pulling out the Penny Hardaway spin move? Oh, and people put up the side by side, and it was, I mean, by the centimeter, a perfect Penny Hardaway little turnaround spin move. It was great. So the Warriors just have a lot of weapons, and Klay Thompson's a nice little Christmas present.
Yeah. And then on the Phoenix side, you point out, and I hate it when people, it was probably good we lose now, because I don't like that. It's never good when you lose. Having said that, they can kind of catch their breath and just keep moving forward, start dominating people again. Yeah,
it's going to be interesting. I love that the fight right now in the West is between the Warriors and the Suns, because I'm just really not infatuated with the whole Lakers thing right now. One thing I did want to throw out to you, because the Wizards, we mentioned them a lot, are 14-10. They're the first in their division, but Bradley Beal is struggling this year. He's scoring just 22 points after scoring 31 last year. His field goal percentage is down by 6%. His three-point percentage is down by 8%. He's really been struggling shooting the ball. His assists, though, are almost at a career high. So they're winning, but his points are really down. How should, St. Louis fans, Bradley Beal fans feel about that kind of, big kind of switch?
Well, contributing to a winner is really what it's all about. Mm-hmm. And if you do that, and if you're making your team and teammates better, personal numbers don't matter. And I'm not sour grapesing it. I'm not, hedging. It'd be great to score 40 a game and win and start winning. And I'm certain Beal wants to score more, wants to shoot better, and I'm sure he will as the season goes on. But being a part of a winner or a team that's trying to be a winner is more important. I really believe that.
And this was bad. This was bad broadcasting on my part. I should have mentioned the big thing, because the NBA changed the rule and an emphasis on how they call fouls. And essentially, they're trying to take away the cheap offensive fouls that shooters were getting by jumping into defenders on pump fakes and things like that.
Right.
And it's hurt some shooters' game. James Harden's been one person, although there are mitigating factors with his fitness level because of injuries that are contributing to that. Bradley Beal has gone from 7.7 free throws last year to 4.1 this year. And so when you talk about the groove that hitting a couple free throws can get a player into in that first quarter when they start out 2 for 6 or something like that, and now that opportunity isn't there. We saw what it did to James Harden up in Brooklyn, and I think we're seeing that a little bit in DC with Beal, is that he's not getting some of the same foul calls he's gotten a lot of his career, and because of that, he's having a little bit more struggle shooting from outside. And I did mention it, he's not shooting as much, despite the fact that his percentages are down big, but he's also shooting the ball less in the first place because he's distributing more, because the Wizards are a better winning team, and that's what people should be focusing on. Speaking of which,
and by the way,
go ahead.
Any rule and its interpretation by a given official in a given game can be argued with. Not that I would ever argue with it. No, heavens no. But
no, you don't argue. You make a statement.
But by and large, by and large, I think the theory behind that change in the rule is good for the game.
Absolutely. It was, I mean, getting defenders to just jump up on a pump fake is one thing, but the way they would jump into them in certain ways, it would just be ridiculous. Guys would jump to the side and things like that. The
Yeah,
shooters got their own rule. The Louis Scala rule a few years ago, where they made the rule where if you enter a player's landing zone, it's a flagrant. And
right.
or it's a technical. I mean, not flagrant. It's a technical.
Yeah,
Where if you enter a player's landing zone, it's a technical. And if you even get close to where they're landing, they call that easier. And so that's the trade-off that I think
agreed.
needed to be made, and in both ways was smart for the NBA to make.
Yeah,
And talking about Bradley Beal, by the way, he's on tomorrow night against the Pistons. That should be an easy win and a game where he should put up a big number. The big thing tonight, if you want to, because we love this is obviously just not only St. Louis based but nationally based. Later tonight, after SLU plays Belmont, the Celtics are playing the Lakers. So obviously, anytime the Celtics and the Lakers are playing, it's a marquee matchup.
yep.
On Wednesday night, I'm going to be watching the 76ers and the Hornets. They played last night. It was a very close game, especially in the first half. So I can't wait to see them already play again in 2 nights. And then you can watch Jason Tatum on the back end of a back-to-back. They're staying out in L.A., playing the Clippers on Wednesday night. But the big one on Wednesday night you want to watch, Bucks and Heat, Premier Eastern Conference matchup at this point. It's, the Bulls, the Bucks, the Heat, the Hornets. That's and the Nets in there too. That's the 5 teams in the East that if they're playing, you want to find a way to watch them. So Bucks, Heat, it's going to be a great game on Wednesday night. And so 2 really good nights of basketball. You got SLU and Belmont, Lakers, Celtics, and then Wednesday a nice little NBA slate as well.
When we get back in touch with everybody on Friday, we'll talk about this great week of NBA basketball and see how things are shaking out a little bit. And you were talking about Bradley Beal. And I think in these great matchups, even though it's before Christmas, and, you really get into it and when the chips are down after the All-Star break. But even in December, with watching which great players rise above the fray in these intense matchups, that's really the fun right now for me.
Yeah, and this is great. I need to find. I gotta point people to something because so Giannis Antetokounmpo just turned 27, and one of the more famous guys on Twitter did a breakdown of the greats at 27, and oh my dear Lord, is the NBA potentially in a world of trouble because Shaquille O'Neal, Michael Jordan, Steph Curry, Magic Johnson, all of these guys, when you think about the defining year where they said, you know what, I think I'm just going to kind of take over the league. That was the year they turned 27. Jordan, it was the first year he won a title. Curry, it was 14-15 when he was just an unbelievable, incandescent, just like light bulb of basketball at all moments and all times. Magic, his age 27 season was, I think, 87 when he took over, and just that's when it became his league. So, I mean, it's just Giannis just turned 27, and this might be a wrap, everybody else.
Yeah, you know what
Thanks for coming out. This is it.
You know what happens, and this is general, and there are many examples to the contrary, but that's where the brain starts to catch up with the God-given physical attributes and all the work they put in, and then the brain starts to kick in, figuring out the game. And that's when you see the next 4, 5, 6 years, sometimes longer if they're lucky, you start to see Hall of Fame caliber play.
This is so. If you're on Twitter, you probably follow him at Dragonflight Jones. He's one of the best people on Twitter, and I guarantee you, there's a lot of people listening who do follow him. So, 2012 LeBron James, 27 years old. 2009 Dwayne Wade, 27 years old. 2006 Kobe Bryant, that was when he was 27. 15-16 Steph. Somebody else pointed out Jordan was 27 at the start of his first title season. Tim Duncan turned 27 in 2003 when he beat Kobe and Shaq won the MVP and the Finals MVP. Kevin Garnett was 27 in 2004 when he won his first MVP. Moses Malone was 27 in 83. That's when he went absolutely crazy. Magic was 27 and 87, his best season. Bird won his first MVP in 84. I think he was 20. I think he was 26 in that one as well. So it's just like it's insane that Giannis already has done all of this. He's just now turning 27, and if you look at a huge percentage of the greats, this is when they start tearing the league to absolute shreds.
So did you peak at 27?
I don't know.
Did you peak at 27, Rocc?
Oh, God.
Let's forget it.
Athletically, yes. We'll just stick with that. We'll stick with that.
Oh, that's going to wrap up the show on that note, as now I've ruined his night.
Yeah,
Hopefully,
thanks for
Rocc
that.
will get it all back together again when we come your way on Friday. Great show. The Billikens and Belmont tonight. And then we'll preview the weekend's games when we come up on Friday. Rocc, great as always. Good breakdown. Well done, sir. And don't forget, for any kind of sports info you're looking for, an inside conversation, always go to Claibs Online. This is the two-man game. That's Matt Rocchio. I'm Bob Ramsey, and we'll see you next time.